The Illegal is a novel, a contemporary novel set in 2018 in two fictional countries about an elite marathoner who has to flee his country um, for reasons of rising ethnic genocide directed against the cultural and ethnic group to which he belongs. So he flees his fictional country, and he can no longer really pursue marathoning as an Olympic pursuit. Now he's running to stay alive, to earn money by winning little races that could give him food and shelter and help him dig himself out of a big hole he's found himself in as an undocumented refugee or stateless man in a rich nation that does not want him. So I'll open up with the first pages of the book, and then I'll read you another little section. Go home. The words came from the runner on Keita's left, white, and surely from Freedom State, limp brown hair flopping as he ran. Arms too high, choppy gait. Running was the smoothest dance in the world. Keita had been trained to picture his own legs like wheels. He'd learned to strike with his feet soundlessly, transfer weight through the balls of his feet, roll off the toes, and spend more time flying than earthbound. Anybody could run, but few with grace. This competitor ran as if his tires weren't inflated. The runner on his shoulder said it again. Go fucking home. A rude man. He deserved to suffer. Keita bumped up the pace. Sooner or later, the obnoxious fellow would start to hurt. The name of the game was to inflict more pain than he felt. So Keita, a stranger in a strange land, whose only transgression was to exist in a place where his presence was illegal, would use speed to break this man. Keita had studied a map of the Buttersby Marathon. It was an out and back route, 21.1 kilometers east along the Chelting Escarpment, a 180-degree turn, and 21.1 kilometers right back to the finish line. A few kilometers after the halfway turn, they would climb back up the marathon's one and only hill. It would curve, steepen, and keep rising for 2 kilometers. Challenging for sure, but what were 2 kilometers uphill at sea level in Freedom State compared to the red hills of Zantorland at altitude? They ran along a winding road bordered by the tallest pine trees Keita had ever seen. Here along the marathon route, massive branchless trunks reached many stories into the air and exploded into a riot of needles and cones. Keita inhaled the smell of pine. Odd to find such welcoming trees in this hostile land. Driving just ahead of them were 3 police motorcycles. One carried a race official who sat facing backwards to keep his eye on the leading marathoners. Keita tried to put the police officers out of his mind. They would never suspect him, not in a race, not under their noses. The motorcade rounded a corner, and the instant it slipped out of sight, the fellow to Keita's left threw a low punch. Keita saw the blow coming and stepped to the right, but it glanced off his umbilical hernia. The hernia, now the size of a golf ball, throbbed. Could the other runner tell it was there, under Keita's shirt? The runners rounded the corner, and the motorcycles came into sight again. It wouldn't be enough to beat his aggressor. Keita wanted to make him suffer. But the aggressive runner remained close. Gonna mess you up, the man said. Keita drifted to the far side of the road. The runner stayed with him. Keita swerved back. The name caller stuck to him. A string of orange cones marked the halfway point. The runners rounded the turn and began to run back in the direction from which they had come. Keita glanced at the large digital clock, which showed 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 11 seconds. Keita's adversary tucked in behind him, and a third runner trailed by a step. Another white guy from Freedom State. 200 meters back, in the direction of the finish line, they blew past the 4th and 5th place runners. 600 meters further along, they encountered another trickle of outbound runners. Keita glanced down. The hernia embarrassed him. When the television news in Freedom State wanted to show hungry kids in Zantorland, they zoomed in on a child with a hernia, a swollen belly, and meager hair faintly reddish from malnutrition. Perhaps it was to blame for Keita's recent bouts of thirst. The hernia was small, but in the weeks since he'd gone into hiding in Freedom State, staying in black market guest houses that took in undocumented people at dusk and booted them out at dawn, he'd often experienced an unquenchable thirst. Today, however, he had gulped down cups of electrolyte drink at each water station, and so far he felt strong. Today, he hoped his body would not betray him. Keita had to make enough money to get the hernia fixed. Leaving aside money to keep himself fed, clothed, and well hidden, he would need thousands for the surgery. If he won another few races, he would check out a private clinic. But first, he had to win this race. The jerk remained one step back. "Red on your ass, sonny boy," he said. He poked Keita's shoulder. "Roger Bannister," he sneered, referring to the name on Keita's bib. "Not on your life." Keita glanced back at his nemesis, a snarling face, mouth hanging open, and a race bib that said Billy Deeds. "What are you looking at?" Deeds asked him. Keita kept running. Deeds would expect a race up the hill, so the best strategy was to cause him pain before they got there. A kilometer before the hill, Keita picked up the pace and put on a burst for 100 meters. Deeds and the third runner stayed with him. "Is that all you got?" Deeds said, but Keita could hear the strain in his voice. Keita coasted for 200 meters and then attacked again for 15 seconds. He glanced over. Deeds was starting to slap the ground with his feet. At the base of the hill, they passed the 24-kilometer mark. Smart dropped back a few meters. Deeds was still on Keita's tail, but breathing hard. Keita picked up the pace once more, drilling down to just under 3 minutes per kilometer. They were passing a river of runners, and some held out their hands to congratulate him. Keita high-fived one or two, just to pretend that he was feeling no pain. As the grade of the slope increased, Keita employed the trick that he'd been taught while training in the Red Hills of Zantoroland. Want to shatter your opponent's confidence? Just when he starts to hurt, you sing. So that's really the opening pages of the novel. So it brings us into this moment, in a crisis in the middle of a marathon in Freedom State.